Welcome to the King of Games 98. On this episode, it's the final matchup.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Region Free Gamers podcast, the podcast fluent in gaming. My name is Paul Ramallo, and today we have a full buzzing colony of podcasters to bring you the finals of our King of Games 98 tournament. Today out of Rhode Island, Mr. Arnaldo Perez.
How you doing, Paul?
Great. Oh, well, we need more hip-hop horns on this show, obviously, right? Our own Florida man, Ozzy Garcia.
Oh, Florida man, I love that designation. I need to live up to it, man. I need to get into the head of an alligator or something. I don't know.
Or don't wear a mask or something.
Yeah, just
You know what? I'm a Florida man as it is because look, I was in New York when the pandemic was at its highest in the epicenter, and then I left to Florida, and now I am in the epicenter in Florida. So. Yeah. You know what? I'm like a COVID chaser right now.
Well, I don't know, man. Correlation or causation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I always seem to see you and the pandemic in the same room together, Ozzy. I don't know what's up with that.
I may or may not be patient zero, guys.
Riding his shiny red bike throughout the Netherlands, Mr. Jeff Ivats.
Ciao, ciao. Hey, guys. That was my Italian, by the way. There we go. Man of international languages over here in Europe.
Very good.
Thanks.
And out of the Bronx, Mr. Anthony Arriaga.
Birkenstocks.
I'm telling you, you can't stop your fiance from buying the Birkenstocks. In fact, it'll be better for your life if she does.
I have to just let her do it. It's just one of those things where I'm just going to give her that slight nod of just disapproval every time.
I don't even know what Birkenstocks are.
You can't stop the stocks, bro.
Yeah.
They're like this sandal, this open-toed kind of sandal, and apparently they're extremely comfortable. I don't know. I've never tried them on. My wife has a size 6 foot, so it's like there's no way, right?
Well, listen, I used to sell Crocs for a living, so and we would tell everybody that it was the most comfortable thing ever, and it was just bullshit that we had to feed them.
Oh, that's an out-and-out lie.
I was going to bring up Crocs, too. I was just like, man, if she gets Birkenstocks, I'm just one step away from a Croc. We're going downhill here.
Oh, dude, Crocs and socks. Please tell me you're going to rock the Crocs and socks.
I rocked them, man. I rocked them while I was working and talking my wares.
Ozzy, you were definitely a Florida man, bro. Definitely a Florida man.
In the middle of Gainesville, Florida,
man. All right, guys. Well, it's the finals. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty pumped that this little project, I say little project, that's been going on for like a year.
A year?
More than a year, man. We started this back in, I think it was
July.
May? In May?
Yeah, I think, because I joined in August and you guys were already recording this.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's been about a year.
This hefty stone around our neck. Just sinking.
No, that's probably a terrible indictment of ourselves. You know, we took a year to record this crap.
But anyhow, yeah, I'm pumped. We're at the final battle today. And hey, before we get to the games, again, a big thank you to all our listeners and supporters. First, for enjoying the show, and second, for spreading the word on social media and with people in person. It's always a lot of fun seeing someone take a minute of their day to share on their Insta stories or wherever that they're listening to us. I don't know, it's still kind of crazy to me that we can ramble here and people all over the world are enjoying it. Like, do you guys ever look at the podcast stats and see where people are downloading the show?
I like start looking and I see Indonesia and I'm like, how did that happen?
How on earth? Sri Lanka? What is going on here? But I mean, we are region free, so I'm super happy that we have all these listeners all over the place.
I can only imagine that there's some part in the world where we are like pirated. There's like a pirated version of the Region Free Gamers
bootleg copies and tape. Yep.
And you need a mod in order to listen to us.
So anyhow, thanks everybody. Keep spreading the word. And as always, if you haven't already, a 5-star review would go down really well with the with the champagne that we're drinking today for the finals. And yeah, the last episode, I think the last episode we actually recorded was the PS5 reveal episode. And Ozzy, you weren't on this one, but
No.
during one of the breaks, I made a joke about how dumb it is for us to worry about finding enough to talk about for an episode, because this is the running gag now, is before every episode we're like, oh, I don't know if we're gonna have enough to talk about, and then 2 hours later we're like, guys, we need to wrap this up. Yeah. So during the break when we were recording the PS5 episode, I made a joke about a 2H pencil. Like I held a 2H pencil up to the camera.
Oh yeah.
And I said we could probably do an episode on that pencil. And I kid you not, Ozzy, we did like 3 minutes on the pencil. And it wasn't even intentional, right? Like
No.
Arnie was like, why is it a 2H? Like, what happened to 1H? And then it was like 3 minutes worth of like, well, the different lead thicknesses and blah, 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 blah.
It wasn't
and
even ironic.
Yeah, it wasn't even. And Arnie, like, like Anthony tossed in a joke, and it was like fucking textbook. I couldn't believe it. when I was editing it, I was like, oh my God.
You know what you call that, Paul? Chemistry.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Oh yeah. Wow.
But anyhow, I'm bringing
that.
that up. I'm bringing the pencil thing up because we're about to talk about Ocarina and Gran Turismo and Half Life and Metal Gear, and it's like for the third time each. So if you're concerned that we won't be able to fill an hour or so here, just, on these games that we've already talked about quite a bit, just bear in mind that we did 2 minutes on pencils and it wasn't even like that difficult.
Yeah, and wait until you see Link face up a Mitsubishi Lancer Evo.
So to give everyone just a quick rundown on what happened in the semifinals, if you missed that episode, Metal Gear Solid took down Ocarina in a very pins and needles matchup that we were very nervous about before we actually went over it. Half-Life overcame Gran Turismo. And,
so let me ask you: was that an upset? Ocarina taking over Metal Gear? I mean, Metal Gear Solid taking down Ocarina of Time.
I wouldn't say so.
Boy, that's a tough question. Like, I think we have to, like, Arnie, did you ever end up doing an Insta poll for which one should have won or whatever?
I don't think I did one specifically for that matchup. I should do one.
But he will do one.
Yeah.
Just for posterity.
People don't know yet. People, as we record this now, people don't know what's coming.
But see, our audience is like just as demented as we are, because I remember doing some polls for like the earlier matchups and like some bananas results coming up and me being like, what is happening?
Well, I remember like Xenogears like winning overwhelmingly over Gran Turismo, for example. So it all plays into the type of audience that we have, and
the type of audience we're consistently disappointing.
Exactly.
I think as well, it's just another reminder that you can't trust the public with democracy. And
exactly. I wasn't the one that brought it up, Jeff.
Podcasting is for professionals, folks. Don't try this at home.
Yeah.
I'm just happy that no one was pissed at us for taking down Pokemon Red and Blue the way we did.
Oh,
that was savage.
I thought that was a very good take. It was a very intelligent takedown.
Yeah, you couldn't argue against it. That was the beauty of our argument. And it's like, when you put facts on the table, you can't deny them. This is logic, right?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, pretty much.
Think, but U.S. government.
I like the fact that even the episode where Pokemon won, I trashed it so badly that it felt like it lost. That actually might have been my favorite part of this whole thing, was the 20 plus years of pent up frustration at Pokemon and the whole franchise and what it stands for. And I finally, oh God, it was so cathartic. My favorite part of this whole thing was when I got a message from our previous guest, Paul, who was on our Metal Gear episode, Play Satan 13 on Instagram. And he sent me a message. It was basically like a round of verbal applause for my take on Pokemon. It was so satisfying to get that message from him. He's like, finally, someone said what needed to be said about Pokemon. And I was like, thank you. Now it's even more worth it. It was already worth it just to talk about it, even if nobody listened. But the fact
we're
that
not labeled as the Pokemon haters, though. So we just have to live up to that. I mean, we have to own it at this point.
I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm not gonna do like what you do with Shigeru Miyamoto and bring it up every episode.
Come on, guys! Now you're putting me into a box.
You just opened the door.
But yeah, Ozzy, what was your favorite moment of the whole series that we've done?
Honest, hand on my heart, I was on the subway because I wasn't on that Pokemon episode, and I was on the subway pre-pandemic, and I was just like coming home from a very long day, and I just hear you go off on Pokemon. And dude, I was like holding back my laughter because I didn't want to be the weird guy in the subway train laughing to himself. So I will never forget that it was just so great. You know, your description about making, kids into, complete assholes. That was just perfect. But no, besides that, in terms of episodes that I'd actually participated in, and I can't speak good today. I don't know why. I must be very rusty from not podcasting for a while. But in terms of my favorite moments, I really had a good time speaking with you and Kelly about Panzer Dragoon Saga and Spyro the Dragon. I don't know why. It was just kind of like an after hours episode that we recorded at night. And I just don't know. It felt chill. It felt very collegiate, and we were just taking down Spyro in a very gentle manner. So I don't know. I mean, besides that, I think that my favorite part was just getting to talk to a lot of people that I enjoy talking with. I enjoy talking to Dennis. I enjoy talking to Kelly. So I think getting the community involved that way was really fun, and I think it's really one of the big reasons why we do this, because it goes beyond us. If it was just the five of us, I mean, we started this before Anthony and Jeff joined, but they were going to be guests anyways. And now we've just grown, but it would have been very different if it was just you, Paul, me, and Arnie just kind of shooting the shit for, I don't know, 15 episodes or whatever.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been
boring as fuck.
I just think that's really the big point about this, is just getting to talk, getting the discussion started and getting to talk to people that we like and we enjoy talking with. I think really that's even the point behind this whole podcasting shtick. It's just getting to talk with people we like talking to. So it's all the friends we made, as Arnie likes to say.
Yeah, all the friends we made along the way.
Speaking of Arnie, what about you, Arnie? What's been your favorite sort of moment or part?
I mean, honestly, the fact that we're here right now is like amazing to me. I thought the wheels were going to fall off this thing like well before this point.
Full confidence behind our
product.
I
thought I would like eliminate Metal Gear Solid and Ozzy would stop talking to me and we'd just end the whole thing before it even got started.
It was very close.
I know it was. That was probably my favorite episode that I was on, was that Banjo-Kazooie episode. I just really enjoyed that episode. But I think my favorite part has honestly been listening to the episodes that I wasn't on, because we were generally very good about not telling each other what had won if we weren't on the episode. And so whenever I listened back to it, I remember feeling that way with the like right at the first round when we did the Ocarina versus Resident Evil 2. I wasn't on that episode, and I was convinced that Resident Evil 2 was going to win. I was convinced that they were just going to eliminate Ocarina outright, just to spite everyone. And then when it did win, I was like, oh, that was pleasantly surprising.
That was a very objective take, because we had people on that episode who were very pro Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like, I mean, between Ozzy and Dennis off the bat, like, those are two people who I assume would rather play Resident Evil 2.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's honestly, I just hope that the arguments that we made were all, you could tell that they were all in good faith. I don't think that, we did make some jokes about certain games, etc., but I think ultimately we gave every game its fair due. Yeah. I don't think that we were hacks with respect to any one game. I don't know. Do you guys feel like we were hacks with any? Like, did we unfairly treat any one game?
Nah.
No. Like, even when we had something like, Ocarina against Baldur's Gate, like Baldur's Gate, we we really pumped its tires, and rightfully so, right? Like a lot of these games are kind of not remembered as, I don't want to say fondly, but like they just don't occupy as much space in the zeitgeist of the time.
Yeah.
But really, like something like Baldur's Gate was a very, very big deal, and it's easy to forget that.
Yeah, I would say we gave PC gaming a fair crack as well, considering, this is quite a console-heavy kind of conversation we usually have. We gave PC games their fair crack of the whip. I spoke to people offline as well, and they're saying, they were surprised that we put up a fight for Baldur's Gate, considering how they see the show. But I guess for me, it would be a slight disappointment that we can't all speak of StarCraft, of Panzer Dragoon Saga, these games that are very difficult to now go back to and play, or even get hold of. I think that's where some people have felt like, how can you objectively criticize or pro a game that you've never played?
Yeah.
And I kind of always that's not us being hacks, but it's definitely like, I think it was always a fair shout from people like, what if you haven't played a game? How can you criticize it? Kind of.
Yeah, especially if you're Anthony and you have it right there with you and you've never played it. I mean, that's the definition of hackery.
Well, the big problem
is
is
the price now, man. I'm gonna have working stocks, man. So this is not good, man.
It sort of creates an untenable situation where it's like, you want to actually talk about the biggest, the best games of 1998. But if I haven't played Panzer Dragoon Saga, then what's my other option? Not talk about it at all, and then have people be like, "How could you not put it on the list of top 16 games of 1998?"
That's the thing. In between the two evils, the worst evil is just not including it at all,
it's just
because
not
it was
about
seminal.
And I think we gave Panzer Dragoon Saga a fair shake. I think particularly the one where it got eliminated, I think that Anthony, Arnie, and Jeff, you guys gave it a pretty good shot.
Yeah.
So I don't feel bad the way that we treated Panzer Dragoon Saga, because let's be honest, Panzer Dragoon Saga is a very good game, but as Paul has mentioned, I haven't played it, but I think it's pretty clear that it's not the best game of 1998. I don't think that that's the understanding. Right. It's a good game that is made all the more mythical because it's so hard to find. And because it was the swan song of a very ill-fated console.
Yeah. And we also already did a whole episode self-flagellating ourselves for all the games we didn't put on this list, which now I guess we can add Dance Dance Revolution to the list.
Yeah,
I guess that's one thing that I wanted to raise with you. We didn't really touch on arcade games. And
no, we did
Dance
not.
Dance Revolution would definitely be along those lines. And now I'm wondering, what other arcade games are there that we missed? I'm pretty sure that there's some person in Mali looking at us saying, why the hell did you not include Dance Dance Revolution?
Well, I can tell you two off the bat were Soul Edge, I guess, and Marvel vs. Capcom. Those two were arcade releases that we did not put on.
I'm fine not including Marvel vs. Capcom. Soul Calibur, maybe that's different, but that game was so much improved on the Dreamcast version that I would say the Dreamcast version is the definitive one. So I'm pretty fine with not including those two.
Yeah, me too. Like DDR is really the only one that I'm kind of like, just because it was so different. It was, and it created. I'm really trying to hold myself back from saying it created a revolution, but. Like, it kind of did. It gave birth to a whole genre that was a bit of a phenomenon. And how many pounds of weight did people lose playing that game? Like, what a great game for the health of
how many
hobby.
inches of sweat had to be mopped off those machines
every single
because
night.
Of lifetime.
I remember, man.
That's the detail we need.
I remember that I could never be as cool as DDR Guy, because we all know DDR Guy.
Oh, of course.
DDR Guy has a very loose-fitting shirt, and he's just leaning on that bar, and he's just going at it. And every time you go to the movie theater, you see DDR Guy there just looking impressive and just wowing the chicks. So I just thought, 14-year-old me, I was like, I'm never going to be as cool as that guy.
So Jeff, what about you? What's been your favorite moment so far in this series?
For me, my favorite moment, the favorite episode that I did was when we took down Pokemon. I loved Pokemon back when it came out, but I was a young boy. Now as an adult, I can objectively look at it, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to tear it to shreds, and kind of make people realize nostalgia blinds all of us, and there's nothing like Pokemon to create nostalgia. So that for me was like a very cathartic moment, and I think, obviously, Paul, you had it as well, where you could finally kind of let it all out, and it was very therapeutic for me. And I think that's probably a good thing. My favorite thing about the whole series was not only did it tap into my old school days of fighting with friends over which game is best just because they have an N64 and you have a PlayStation, and for the life of you, Cloud is a better antagonist than Link. All those sort of like stupid debates that we all had, or maybe I just had. So it
No, we all did. We all did.
Okay, thank God. So it allowed that to kind of come out, and I made sure I restrained myself a little bit at times, because I think it's quite obvious to see like where my allegiance, I guess you could call it, where it lied in that time. Yeah. But it was great and therapeutic, like I said, to be able to talk through games and to really to go put them up against each other is, you could say it's a childish thing to do, but it was a lot of fun. And I think, like we've said, it was fair and it was honest, and people have enjoyed it. And the responses we've got just shows that the five of us are able to objectively go after games and really put them up and bring them down where they need to be, or when they need to be. And that's, I think, a really good thing to have learned from this whole process.
Yeah, I was surprised at myself. I mean, that episode was Pokemon against Gran Turismo, and it was you, Jeff, me, and Anthony. And I was honestly surprised at myself at being able to, really vouch for Gran Turismo, because Pokemon Blue was a pretty big deal for me back in the day. I played hours upon hours of that game, and just to be able to say, look, you are blinded by the terrible, terrible poison of nostalgia. Just take off those blinders. And it's like Neo finally taking that, red pill and finally seeing that, life is not as you think it is. That it's not air you're breathing. So yeah, I think that was a really good episode. So I'm glad that you raised it, Jeff.
Cool. Yeah.
Cool. What about you, Anthony? What your favorite moment so far?
Yeah, I mean, beating a dead horse, but I was going to say the exact same thing about the Pokemon GT episode.
Yeah.
But I think it was just because it was just like a perfect example of the decision making that we were making. Like that it was just one of those things where we didn't know what we were going to pick going in, and we convinced, like, through discussion and not even an argument, just a fact-based discussion that, oh wow, this is a good choice. Yeah,
I think like we all came into it for the most part with no decision as to which game we were going to pick.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it came up organically. You guys may think that we are bullshitting, but no, it's really true. No, we came into it thinking, okay, this is going to be an interesting matchup. And over the course of the episode, we were like, oh crap, I'm going to have to make a decision. Yeah. And in the case of Artie, you try to prolong that as much as possible.
But that's how I went into the Pokemon episode with that, because in my head I thought, there's no way Pokemon doesn't advance, right? But let's see what happens. And as we were talking about, I was like, there's no way. No, this game cannot move on. Yeah, but I just in general love that. I just love not knowing what was going to happen, though. That was like the best part to me, just not knowing in each episode which way we were going to go. And if you were that third and deciding vote, oh shit. The pressure.
Well, unless, like in that episode, it was like two of us had already voted for Gran Turismo. So the third one got left off the hook. So if there's a split vote, then yes, you have a very heavy burden on your shoulders.
Yeah, that was with Baldur's Gate. I remember I picked Baldur's Gate, and I didn't know who was going to vote. And I think Ozzy, right? I think Ozzy voted for Baldur's Gate at the end. There was like the deciding vote, and I was like in total shock. Like, oh wow, all right, cool. Yeah, I knew what I was doing.
I've enjoyed that part of it, where I come into an episode expecting things to go one way, and then you guys make arguments that I never thought of. Mm-hmm. And it really like changes my mind or opens my perspective. And I don't think I ever had a vote really swayed from one game to another from what I thought was going to happen. But at the same time, like for example, at the semifinals, like when we had Gran Turismo and Half Life, I was pretty certain that it was going to be Half Life for me. And then Jeff made some points about GT, and I was like, damn, maybe I'm going to vote GT. This is a lot tighter than I thought it was going to be. That's been a lot of fun for me too.
You know, Paul, I mean, I think that the counterpoint to that is that you were on the episodes where Metal Gear Solid almost got taken down by Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah.
And then when Grim Fandango got took down StarCraft. So I wasn't on those episodes. So Paul, tell us, your firsthand experience about those emotions.
Well, the Metal Gear Solid one was it frustration? I don't want to say frustration because it's a video game podcast. Like, I shouldn't be getting frustrated at anything involving this project, really. It was more incredulity at the time where I'm like, oh my God, that was it. I was amazed and surprised because I just assumed that Arnie was going to vote Metal Gear. I had no idea he had such an affinity for Banjo-Kazooie. And we knew Ryan was going to vote Banjo, which is why one of the reasons that we brought him on, other than him being a really good guest. And so when it came down to Arnie, I was like, oh, this could be a problem.
Because I even remember that we were trying to look for someone on Instagram that actually had touted Banjo-Kazooie, and we had some difficulty. And then we saw, Ryan seems to be really into it, so let's bring him on because this might be a very lopsided matchup.
Yeah.
That was one of the polls that was really close when I put it up on Instagram. Surprisingly close.
Yeah. How do you feel, Arnie, how do you feel about those decisions you made?
I regret nothing.
Good.
But I will say I did feel like I was being put in the deciding vote position a lot. I don't know if for comedic effect. But I was gonna say regarding what Paul was talking about, like, I did have my vote swayed a couple times, like legitimately came in being like, I think this is the game I'm picking, and then heard arguments and was like, actually, I'm gonna go this way. And one of them was Jeff during the semifinals, and I will never forget this because he hung me out to dry.
Yo, he did.
The one person voting for Gran Turismo. So maybe that's my karmic retribution for all the mistakes I've made along this process.
Jeff came out with the most inspiring speech that we were all like, yo, he's right. And then he just totally voted the other way. I was like,
it was like Henry V in the Saints Crispin's Day speech. He just gave Gran Turismo one final push before its death.
Yeah, exactly.
I've often been told I should get into politics, so that's another thing to put on my CV. There we go.
Nice. Hey, that works, man. Politics, it's all about telling people you're going to do one thing and then doing another.
What? That happens?
Just a swerve, man.
All right, guys, let's take a little break. And when we come back, we're going to get to our bronze medal matchup. All right, everyone, and we're back. And we were just talking during the break, and it occurred to me that we have one more question we should probably kind of talk about here before we actually get to the bronze medal matchup. Mm-hmm. So, Arnie, I'm desperate to know, which game would you have liked to see go past the round of 16? Which game got eliminated early and you were really disappointed?
StarCraft for sure. It was really hard.
Get the hell out of here.
Okay.
Get the hell out of here. You shut your mouth. You have no standing to make that claim.
I think for me it's a toss up. I think Banjo-Kazooie sort of got a bad rap by getting matched up with Metal Gear right off the bat, and I think with a few other matchups it would have gone a little bit further. And then Xenogears was the other one that I was sort of sad because I would have liked to talk about it a little more, and I thought it deserved a little more love, but go up against Gran Turismo and that's what happened.
Yeah, pretty much. Let me build on that. Just as an easy segue, my disappointment from the round of 16 was StarCraft. during the episode when we were recording and you made the choice, at first I was like, like once I picked my jaw up off the floor, I was like, all right, cool. This is actually, no, this is great. This is really interesting. You know, an upset, every tournament needs an upset, right? But with that said, man, oh man, did I ever love StarCraft.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to have seen it go on, just because I think it would have made for a very interesting round of 8 game. Because I think it had the potential to make the semis for sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Ozzy?
I mean, it's kind of a combination of everything you have said. Of course, I would have loved StarCraft to have gone a little bit further. I never got to talk about it. I really thought I was going to talk about it at some point, and then Arnie robbed me of that opportunity. But alas, so it is. But no, I mean, I wish, and this is going off of what Arnie said, I really do wish that Xenogears had gotten matched up with some other title, because I do have a lot of love for Xenogears, and I feel, looking in hindsight, like I was very tough on Xenogears, and it came off as if I didn't like the game, and that's completely not the case. I have so much love for that game, and so if it had gotten paired up with, I don't know, like Grim Fandango, I think it would have definitely gone further than it
Now
did.
you're being silly. Grim Fandango is the destroyer of tournaments. There's no way that got by Grim Fandango.
But yeah, I mean, I think I wish that Xenogears had gone a little bit further.
Cool. What about you, Jeff?
I'm going to have to go with Resident Evil 2. I think that whoever came up against Ocarina of Time at the beginning was going to struggle.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that possibly my favorite game of the summer of '98 got knocked out first. I absolutely adored that game. And a group of friends at the time, we were all playing it together at the same time, and we've mentioned that before, how much fun that is. And it's a game, like, the remake was phenomenal, a phenomenal achievement by Capcom. So I think that game has legs, and I think it could have carried itself potentially to a semi-final slot if it got the right, like, the luck of the draw. But like, to me, that matchup is that it's that pure, classic example in any sports competition where two top teams, the bad luck of the draw, one of them's got to get knocked out, and it was just Resident Evil's turn on that occasion, unfortunately. But it doesn't deserve to get knocked out in the last 16. But again, it just shows what an amazing year '98 was.
Yeah.
So it would have taken out most other games in that round, but there we go, didn't.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Anthony, what about you?
Yeah, for me, it's the Resident Evil 2, because that was like the first episode I recorded on for the tournament. And man, that was a hard decision to make. And I was struggling because I was like, nah, Ocarina of Time, nah, come on now, I'm over this. But then as we were talking about it, and it was the first round, we pushed Resident Evil 2. And I think after we recorded, Jeff, I don't know if me and you spoke about it, but we didn't feel quite right about ourselves. Like, we just had this unease. And that was like the beginning of everything. From there on in, I was just like, man, this thing is going to be tough. But I will say that, because a lot of these episodes were recorded ahead of time. And I remember getting the pre-record of the Banjo-Kazooie decision that Arnie made and how frustrated Paul sounded on the recording. Even though you couldn't tell, I was just like, yo, Paul wants to kill people right now, right? So fast forward. So I heard that episode, and then fast forward to the Grim Fandango StarCraft one, and I was just like, I was on the train listening to that episode. I thought StarCraft, yeah, it's gotta go, right? When I heard that decision being made, I was like, shit, Arnie is dead right now. Paul must be beside himself. But it was legit some of the funniest moments I've experienced during the course of this tournament.
I did put
man,
Paul
but it was
through trials and tribulations during the
Hey guys, so actually, you know what? Before we move to the bronze medal, just rapid fire here. No explanation. Just give me an answer. Anthony, StarCraft or Resident Evil 2?
StarCraft.
Ozzy.
StarCraft.
Arnie.
StarCraft.
Jeff.
You're all crazy. I can't believe I'm associating with you guys. This is...
Did you guys do this to spite Jeff?
No, I didn't know. I honestly didn't know what you guys were gonna say. I'm actually surprised. This that was worth it.
I'd like to change my answer real quick. StarCraft 64.
All right, guys. Bronze medal matchup then. We've got Ocarina of Time against Gran Turismo. And this might seem like a foregone conclusion, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
I've played Gran Turismo probably about 10 times as much as Ocarina of Time personally. Is there a reason, Ozzy, why Gran Turismo should upset Ocarina here? If you had to point to anything.
I wouldn't put it as a reason for an upset. I think that it holds its own. I think that if you look at these two games, most people would assume, of course, Ocarina of Time will take it because it's so legendary. But again, that's been the whole reason of existence for this tournament. We want to reassess games and make sure that they're put in their proper place. And so I want to give each game their due. And we're recording this as the PS5 has been announced, and we all did our PS5 episode. And one of the things that shocked me was that when they announced Gran Turismo 7 and they did the gameplay loop, they used Trial Mountain, which was one of the original tracks in Gran Turismo. And it was such a joyous moment to see this track that when you go back to it now, it looks very bare bones, but the skeleton is there. And it's just as legendary now as it was then. And the idea is that these developers created something that was pretty timeless. And they created, and I think that's one of the components that people don't talk too much about Gran Turismo, that their original tracks, which were more prevalent in the first game, were really excellent tracks. And they stayed on during the course of the series. So the fact that 23 years later, or 22 years later, we can go back and recreate that track without really changing much of the layout, really is a testament to the design brilliance of Polyphony Digital and what they achieved with that game. So I'm really looking forward to having that experience kind of recreated. I really hope that with Gran Turismo 7, they just bring back the tracks from the first one, because they really nailed it on the first try. So I think that Gran Turismo really deserves a lot of props. On the other hand, Ocarina of Time, it's just, when I think about Gran Turismo, and I think this is a point that we made with Kelly on the episode against Xenogears, Gran Turismo is a game that it was seminal, but there are other games that have improved upon it. And even in its own series, I prefer Gran Turismo 3, for example, or Gran Turismo 5. Whereas with Ocarina, all it's ever had has been a 3D remake. 3D in the 3D Nintendo DS, 3DS sense, because it was already 3D. But there really isn't an Ocarina that you can play otherwise. I think, yes, in a sense, Wind Waker just follows the same Ocarina mold. Twilight Princess follows the Ocarina mold. Even Skyward Sword follows the Ocarina mold. It wasn't until Breath of the Wild really broke through that we kind of shook that foundation. And if you really want to think about it, it's the same mold that was applied in A Link to the Past. But still, there's only one Ocarina, and you can't really get that same experience through another game. With that said, I would probably still prefer to play Gran Turismo, because there's just so much more meat in there for me. And maybe this is just when it comes down to a personal preference. It's just being able to purchase cars, being able to, have that connection with a car, get to know how it handles, and knowing that it's going to be very different from this other Honda Civic that I've been playing with for, 16 hours. It's kind of a journey that you go through. Same with Link, where you're going on a journey. But with Gran Turismo, I feel like that journey, I have my own agency in it, that it's me that's going through the journey, not Link. So I don't know if that very long and rambling answers your question, but that's kind of where I am in terms of why Gran Turismo deserves a fair shot.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent answer, and you've brought up things that I hadn't considered. The tracks especially, it's not something that I really ever even once thought of until you mentioned it, but you're right. Those tracks in the original were fantastic. The one that I remember most personally from, and I'm getting into Gran Turismo 2 here, but like to me, Laguna Seca was like the
absolutely.
one. Yeah. But beyond that, the tracks that they made, they were fantastic. Anybody else have anything they want to bring up? I mean, personally, I I kind of don't. I kind of know where I'm leaning already, and I don't have anything. I don't have anything, frankly, as good as what Ozzy had to add to the discussion. Does anybody else?
I mean, I think it in just in that I want it to be known, because I don't think we've ever mentioned it. I don't think we ever got a chance to talk about some of the other aspects of Ocarina that were also very good, that I think we sort of, people just take for granted, right? Like, certain aspects of a Zelda game are generally very good, the soundtrack being one of them for Ocarina of Time. I think it has, at least for me, a lot of very seminal music from specifically that time, like 1998, N64, and like Ocarina of Time. And so that is one of those aspects that I think, in the same way that the original tracks for Gran Turismo are something that I think has sort of stood the test of time, the music that Ocarina of Time helped establish in that it was more, I think, a more full sound than had been seen before in other Zelda games, I think has sort of carried forward into future Zelda games. Aside from that, I just think, Ocarina of Time, obviously, we've talked about this before, is a number one for so many people, not just in 1998, but of all time. And it's not for us. I know it's not for me, but there is something there, right? There's a full package with the story, the characters, the way the game controls, the way it feels, the way the world works. There's something enjoyable there. I distinctly remember, as a kid, just watching people play Ocarina of Time, and I had one of those moments where it was like, this is what gaming is now. Sort of wide-eyed, holy shit, the next generation is here. And so, in that sense, I've always thought of Ocarina of Time as, a special game. Not necessarily a favorite game, but one that definitely deserves to be appreciated.
Yeah. And I will say, Artie, I mean, ever since I woke up and I was about to record this episode, I've been listening to Storm of Swords in my head. It's just one of those games for which the soundtrack is so indelible and it's so connected to it that every time you think about the game, the soundtrack comes up. And the soundtrack has become so legendary that it kind of supplants the game in and of itself. I honestly think that. I think that a big reason why people are so nostalgic about Ocarina of Time is, one, because they played it at the right point in time in their lives. It's similar to me and Shenmue. I played Shenmue at the right time, and so any time that I listen to the Shenmue soundtrack, it's going to bring up the feels. Whereas with Ocarina of Time, it's the exact same thing. And so sometimes people confuse that nostalgia and confuse that soundtrack, which is, bar none, one of the best soundtracks, probably the best soundtrack of that generation, at least in my view, with the actual game itself. And I mean, we don't have to beat a dead horse. I think the Ocarina of Time hasn't aged as well as people think it has. But the soundtrack is so overwhelming that it kind of supplants an objective perspective and assessment of the game itself.
Interesting. Another thing that I hadn't really considered, because when I think of Zelda, you're right. It starts from that intro, right? As soon as you power it up and the intro screen pops up and you hear that tune, that's what I remember mostly from Zelda, which, I don't know, that can either be good or bad, that the main thing I remember is the title screen. But but the fact that even the title screen left that kind of mark on me and I can still hear the music from it, that's definitely something to consider. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
I think all I would do is just agree with you two, with Ozzy and Arnie. I think it wasn't my favorite game of that year, but I can fully appreciate all the love that it gets. Ocarina of Time, that is. Gran Turismo was a game for people who love cars and love racing, and it was a massive breath of fresh air for that new market of gamers who previously they had Top Gear on the SNES, but there wasn't really a racing game for people who were like, I'd rather drive my car down to the countryside and go down, through the lanes and all that stuff, rather than play on the Super Nintendo. It bridged that big gap, and that's where I think I said on the episodes, Ocarina of Time, I went to my friend's house who got it at Christmas, and I pretended not to be impressed, and I was deeply jealous because I was like, man, I wish the PlayStation could play this kind of game. But then my brother had Gran Turismo, and I could see just like he absolutely loved it and got addicted to it and got addicted to 2, 3, and 5 as well. So I see it. Like I see why people love these games. But yeah, are they two of my favorite games? No, but damn, they are amazing feats.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get the picks in. Anthony, we'll start with you.
Gran Turismo for me.
Oh, just like that. Any particular reason? Anything swayed you?
So like both these games was like they were just amazing releases that year. There's so much romanticism with Ocarina of Time, obviously with the Nintendo 64. And this pick isn't based on me just disliking Ocarina of Time. It's just my personal preference. Gran Turismo. I just feel like the game started a revolution, an evolution, so to speak, in racing games. And I think you can still go back to this original game even now and play it and still have a good time. Because like you guys mentioned, you're more in control of what happens here. And nothing like this had happened, but not on this scale had been released before. And it's just Gran Turismo for me. That's the game I was playing that year.
Interesting. I like that you started it off with, it's not because I dislike Zelda, because one day when I'm telling my kids the story about this podcast series, the first thing I'm going to say is, fuck, Anthony really hated Zelda. Arnie, make a pick.
I mean, listen, I can honestly say with 100% love in my heart that I did not think when I started this journey that I'd be talking about Gran Turismo and Ocarina of Time in the same episode. Like Gran Turismo is just such a work of love and passion from everybody there. And I don't think, when you're talking about Gran Turismo, it is the highest selling game on the PS1. And much like what Anthony said, I did think it started a revolution. I think it engendered what could be an entire generation of people who might not have otherwise be interested in racing to now have it as like a main fixture of like things that they enjoy doing. And Gran Turismo has been a consistent seller for Sony for every generation that they've been a console manufacturer. But with that said, I do have to go Ocarina on this one. I can't stress enough how much this tournament has made me a fan of Gran Turismo, a series that I before had like never even looked twice at.
Interesting. Ozzy, how about you?
I mean, by that same point, I think Arnie made a good point regarding Gran Turismo being an introduction to people that wouldn't otherwise like racing games. But I also think that it also had the opposite effect of getting people that would otherwise not be interested in games by virtue of their love for racing.
Yeah.
So it broadened the appeal of gamers as a whole. And because we're region free, I like to take a look at this from an international perspective. Ocarina of Time is a very kind of gamer's game. It's a game for people that like games to begin with.
Yep.
It's not a game that if you didn't like games to begin with, it was going to sway you to like games. Whereas with Gran Turismo, I could tell the very first moment that I heard about Gran Turismo was in Cuba, and I was a 9-year-old, and I could see people passing it around like if it was a drug. And people like were trafficking in memory cards because in Cuba there weren't that many memory cards, but with Gran Turismo you really do need a memory card because otherwise it's kind of defeats the purpose of the whole game. And so memory cards became this hot commodity. And I talked to people, from Latin America, from Europe, and from all over, and Gran Turismo is a pretty big fucking deal. Whereas with Ocarina, yes, it's a big fucking deal, but it's a big fucking deal for us gamers. It's a gamer's game. And to be honest, when I think about it, I mean, I really tried to give this game a fair shot. I really tried to give Ocarina a fair shot. I played 7-8 hours of it. And every time I think of it, I think about the drudgery of this game. It's just so fucking slow.
It does not spark joy.
And maybe if I was an 80-year-old or 90-year-old, I would have been into this. Maybe that's the unfairness of me being a jaded adult. But I just honestly, playing this game to me, it brings up like negative feelings. And as much as I love the soundtrack, I could not lie to myself in telling you that I did not like this game. I really did not like this game, and maybe that exposes me for the hack that I am. But I'm trying to make the point of, this is not a game that has aged that well. I hate to say it, but it hasn't. Whereas Gran Turismo, I mean, I know that there are better versions of it nowadays.
Yeah.
But I could still go back to the first one and play it. I could still, enjoy it for what it is without having to say, well, this is 1998. Maybe if I had done this when I was a 9-year-old, maybe I would have liked this more. And just by virtue of that, Gran Turismo gets the nod for me. And I really didn't think that this was going to happen. I honestly did not think that we were going to beat up on Ocarina of Time this much. I'm shocked. I really am. I'm not even feigning this.
My conscience is clean.
Anyways, so that's a Gran Turismo for me.
All right, I'm gonna do my best to keep things interesting here. I'm gonna go next because I know how I'm gonna vote, and then Jeff is gonna end up being the decider, which obviously means that I'm going with Ocarina over Gran Turismo. Which,
are you just saying that, Paul?
No,
just
No, I was gonna go with Ocarina even before this episode started, and I haven't heard anything to kind of I have heard some really good points made that made me think about it, but ultimately, even though I've played Gran Turismo 10 times more than Ocarina, and even though Ocarina isn't necessarily my kind of game, I still have a very deep appreciation for what it accomplished. And if I go back in time and I'm, say, like you said, Ozzy, if I'm like between 9 and 15 years old, that is my favorite game of all time. Bar none. And I don't feel like separating that potential fact out is enough to sway me towards Gran Turismo, because Gran Turismo obviously is the game that I would rather play today, just left to my own devices. But overall, for impact on the industry, for what it accomplished, I have to go with Ocarina. So, with that said, Jeff, please bring it home.
I'm going to be nice and short, I hope. Not going to copy Arnie's example. But with that said, I did prepare a speech to make sure that I got all my... No, I didn't do any of that such. I also came, like Paul, I came with an idea how I was going to vote on this one. And I also haven't heard anything to sway me as much as Gran Turismo did bridge that gap and did take gaming forward to the masses. I still am a gamer at the end of the day, and Zelda, as much as it frustrates me today, and as much as I can't go back to it and play it, and as much as I can't go back and play Gran Turismo, I'd rather have Gran Turismo 7, thank you very much. I have to pick Ocarina of Time.
I failed.
Wow.
No,
and that's all because you went against Resident Evil 2 earlier. No, it's not.
No, this. I think this outcome makes some sense. I think it's certainly a lot closer than I expected. I thought it would be like 4-1 or 5-0 for Ocarina of Time, but excellent points were made, and I'm still kind of like, do I regret my choice? I don't know.
You do.
It's not too late. This episode's not live yet. We can edit.
Now we will all rise to listen to the Hylian national anthem.
Hey guys, I mean, I just want to be clear. I don't hate Ocarina of Time. I don't. It frustrates me.
You just love Gran Turismo.
I distinctly remember, Ozzy, you using the word drudgery. With
drudgery doesn't mean hate, but it is drudgerous, if that's a word.
I don't hate it. I just dislike every single thing about it.
Not the soundtrack.
I love the music. I love the music.
Yeah, the music's in there.
But music does not a game make.
Tell that to Dance Dance Revolution, sir.
All right, guys, let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll have our finals. All right, everyone, we're back. And so now we've got our finals matchup. Dear God, how I've waited for this. So I think we can kind of go around here and see if anybody has any points that they want to make with regards to Half-Life and Metal Gear Solid that maybe we haven't brought up on the show before, or maybe something that we kind of want to reiterate or rephrase. Ozzy, I'm reasonably certain you'll have something to add here. Why don't we start with you?
Oh man, I was hoping that you guys would add something that I could latch onto. No, look, I mean, on one hand, you have one game that I have a very strong attachment to in Metal Gear Solid, and on the other, I have a game that I have almost no attachment to in Half-Life. So I really need to put my thinking cap on in terms of trying to be as objective as possible and also, give its game its fair due. I really appreciate Valve because Half-Life to me now, more than a series, it's an idea. And the idea is that with each game, you don't launch the game unless you have something revolutionary to say or do. And that's something that I admire Valve for. With Half-Life 1, they really upended the concept of a first-person shooter. With Half-Life 2, they basically established the concept of physics-based games. And now we don't have Half-Life 3, but we have Half-Life Alyx. And that game really moves the virtual reality genre forward. At least that's what I have seen, because I can't afford the Oculus or Valve headset, whichever it is, that costs like $1,000. But I hear that's what it does. And so with Half-Life, again, I see this game as more of an idea of, this was Valve's declarative statement. This was Valve's mission statement in saying, this is who we are. We make games that push the genre forward. We make games that go beyond the medium itself. And that's why you see things like Steam being such, a part of Valve, because they're not just there just to make a fun experience, which you can sit through and say, oh, that was fun. It's just they want to make sure that they're innovating, and I appreciate them for that. That said, I really don't want to say that I don't care much for Half-Life, but it's just not a game that I think, when you look at everything it did in terms of moving the genre forward, the Call of Duties of this world are a direct offspring of Half-Life. Counter-Strike, all of that, it's massively influential. But I don't really care much for the shooting mechanics. The shooting mechanics to me are a little bit loose, and I don't like the crowbar and trying to take down those little face huggers and all of that. It's just, I don't want to call it drudgerous, but it's not tight, and that kind of carries forward with the platforming itself. I think that it makes for a very good narrative-driven experience. But I also don't like the fact that Gordon Freeman is a silent protagonist. I really have a strong dislike for silent protagonists. I think that it's kind of a cop-out. And the idea of, you're just stepping into his or her shoes, I find that to be bullshit. It's just like, give me a good character, develop him. And when people say, oh, Gordon Freeman is one of the best characters of all time, it's like, are we looking at the same thing? This guy doesn't even utter a single freaking sentence. So with that said, Metal Gear Solid, I really do feel like this was a game from which there was no return. After this game, we were in a different plane. But I also think that if you're a PC gamer, for example, you look at Metal Gear Solid and it's almost like, well, this game looks kind of bad in terms of its actual physical look. It's an aesthetic for sure, but if you're playing, I don't know, Quake on the PC and you see Metal Gear Solid and you see that these models don't even have like a mouth or anything, you're looking at this and you think, what's all the hoopla about? Yeah. And again, that's the beauty of design over aesthetics. Even the game look itself is an aesthetic, and one that I actually feel quite nostalgic for, even though I'm not going to put that as a positive because, again, nostalgia sucks. But, everything about that game, its narrative, its sound, its Pac-Man-like, maze design that Kojima basically created Lego sets in order to perfect it. I think it's a testament to how well design can overcome graphical limitations. Whereas with Half-Life, it really wasn't a graphical tour de force, but it really moved the genre forward in a way that first-person shooters were not doing so before. And I think it was a necessary step in that evolution. But with Metal Gear Solid, it's just hard to divorce how tightly designed the whole experience is. It's a game that's probably, if you know how to play it, it's probably no more than 8 to 10 hours. And you can play it over and over and over and over again, and it hasn't lost a bit of luster. It's still shiny.
Do we feel like we deduct points from Metal Gear because it hasn't really been... I shouldn't say it hasn't been copied, because there were attempts. The stealth genre kind of exploded after Metal Gear, but has also just as quickly fizzled out. So the imitators now are very few. Does that matter at all? Because we have games like BioShock and, you know, those kind of games that are more narrative driven, but FPS, which is, you know, the most popular genre today. So do we deduct points from Metal Gear for that because of the fact that it's just not a game that is made anymore?
Just to not lose my train of thought, and everyone feel free to step in. I was going to say that I was going to take like notes, you know, in this episodes going forward, so I wouldn't have to interrupt, but I guess that still hasn't happened. But no, I mean, if anything, I think that's even more of a positive in terms of Metal Gear. The first one is still one of my favorites because the sequels added so many mechanics that were sometimes not greatly integrated. You know, they were better ideas than, you know, execution. And Metal Gear Solid 2 in particular added a ton of things that I just didn't really care for. Like, for example, the first person, you know, view. I found that to be kind of a deviation that I did not care much for. And
yeah,
I can only find the pure Metal Gear Solid experience still in the first game. And I think that its simplicity for its time, it's still, to me, one of the positives from it. That, you know, when you look at something like Metal Gear Solid 5, which is so mechanics-driven, and with CQC and all these things that Kojima added, to me, that actually detracted from the game rather than added to it. So the fact that it's never been done again is because developers think that you need to add more to it, whereas that game was pretty perfect as it was.
Yep. Yeah, I would say, yeah, where I see stealth games today, what I don't like, and maybe it's because I'm not particularly great at stealth games, they keep it very open, so you don't really know what the rules are. So I tried to play Dishonored, and it's like, you can play this game stealth-like. Okay, I'll adopt a stealth approach to it, and after like 10 seconds, I get seen. I'm like, how have I been seen? There's no way of me knowing that. And I think that's where it's like, well, this is now just another FPS. I'm just going to run and gun and just do what I'm going to do. But yeah. I think what I loved about Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 was that there were rules in place that allowed you to feel like you had the upper hand because you were Solid Snake or Liquid or, you know, Big Boss or whoever you were. And you felt like you were a vastly superior soldier compared to what was in the field. It still required you, obviously, to do things right. But you felt like you were a really good secret agent, whereas in my opinion, a lot of stealth stuff today, like The Last of Us, which can be stealthy, it's because they have this extra sense where they can hear sound through walls and they can, you know, I'm like, this is, sorry to say this word, but this is bullshit. How can a 16-year-old girl be able to sense where people are in other rooms and all this? It's like, no, like not even really a secret agent or a super spy like Solid Snake or a Navy SEAL, whatever term you want to throw at someone, can do that.
Yeah.
And at least in Metal Gear, it justified at every single step. It justified how the game was built. Because in my opinion, Konami and Kojima and their production did it as the gameplay first. This is the game, and this is how we're going to work things in. So when you look at, say, like the HUD system, where you can see where people are on the map, they completely justify it by using the genome and the injections, and it tells you, look, this is possible because of these things that have happened to these individuals, rather than Snake has psychic abilities to know where people are standing and where CCTV is looking. Yep. So you put that on top with then the extra media attention that Kojima and his team put into it, which was, for me, is why it's still groundbreaking when you've got the Merrill's codec number on the back of the case, and you got Psycho Mantis. Those two moments are still, and you can see which way I'm leaning, are still absolute standout genius gameplay development, and no one's done that since. You know why they haven't done that since? Because they know they'll just be accused of copying.
Yeah. That's a very good
why
point.
we haven't seen another Metal Gear Solid in 2020, because you can't. It will just be too much of an obvious copy. Even Metal Gear Solid 5 is nothing like Metal Gear Solid, because it can't. It's moved on. So I'm with Ozzy. Like, I think it goes well in its favor that it wasn't copied, because people looked at it, in my opinion, and went, holy shit, this is incredible. We can't. How do we touch this? And Siphon Filter comes along, and Splinter Cell comes along, which are
No.
no. But at least Splinter Cell
Poor Sam.
did some really good stuff. It wasn't a bad stealth game at all.
Yes.
So for me with Half-Life, seminal, amazing FPS. Yeah, the gun mechanics today, the climbing and the obstacle controls and movement is pretty bad. Half-Life 2 ironed out a lot of that. Not all of it, but most of it on the gunplay perspective. But I think, like I said on the episode, the greatest thing about Half-Life is, yes, Gordon Freeman doesn't speak, but it allows you to interact with the story in a very personal way, and it was that freedom that at the time you'd never really experienced. And I think that's where it does stand out. And I'm the same as Ozzy, man. Like, I think Steam, what they did is incredible. It's a real shame Half-Life 3 is kind of stalled and we'll never see it. But what they've given us is tantamount to in the gaming world, I would call it genius.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, fair enough. So, anybody else have any other points that they've been clutching onto tightly that they just want to release now?
Artie, please make a point for Half-Life, please.
I mean, when you talk about both these games, at least for me, it's for me the most important thing for either of these games is just not only the gameplay that both of them share, which is excellent on both. I would say Half-Life's is rougher for some of the reasons that Jeff and Ozzy have talked about. I think Metal Gear does a much better job of sort of being like, this is the world, this is how things go, like, follow these rules and you'll be fine. And whatever Half-Life did or didn't do, it's a little clunkier now. I get that it was great back then, it was revolutionary, it was amazing. Me trying to play it now in 2020, I'm like, it's a lot harder to get around, to fight things. Like, some of the enemies, like Ozzy said, are really small. It's really fucking annoying to hit them. But when it comes to creating sort of an open world, a story that you really want to dive into, really that immersiveness that Half-Life brings is what I think is its biggest cap in its hat, is that I really do feel like I'm sort of in this oppressive environment. Like, even though I'm wearing this suit that makes me super powered, I still feel very vulnerable. I still feel very scared. Like, when I'm going around corners, I'm like praying to God that there's not a fucking mutant there to kill me. Whereas with Metal Gear, it's more about feeling like a fucking badass. Like, I feel really cool. Like, whenever and I'm not good at Metal Gear. Like, I die all the time, but I never lost that feeling of like, I'm the baddest motherfucker on the planet. Like, when I'm Solid Snake. And I think that's what Kojima does. Like, I think that the other reason you can't really make a copy of Metal Gear is because you would have to extract, like, Kojima's movie-addled brain that's just been, like, soaking in media for, like, 40 years. He really adds, like, his own touch to things. And that's what you get with Metal Gear, or, you know, Death Stranding or whatever else he's making. Even if, you know, Metal Gear is now, what, a 22-year-old game, like, it's still required reading if you want to really experience the world that he's creating. You have to go back. And at that point, I'm glad that he made a game that may be simple, in terms of its gameplay requirements, but is really what that has done is kept it accessible to people who do want to go back and sort of get the whole story from beginning to end. And then all the explosions and the insanity that goes on is just icing on the cake at that point.
Yeah. The simplicity is definitely something I think you're right, Ozzy. Like, I agree. You know, adding more actually subtracts from the overall experience with games, you know, in the post Metal Gear era, so to speak. Anyhow, shall we get to the picks here?
Sure.
Here we go.
Ozzy, you look like you might want to add something.
No. I don't know, if you're asking me for a pick, then I can do that. But no, I think that I have stated my piece.
All right then. So why don't we start with your pick then?
Yeah, I mean, I tip my hat here. I mean, it's Metal Gear Solid. Mm-hmm. There's no other way around it. I think it's just, I think it really deserves this top spot. I don't just say it just because I'm a Metal Gear Solid hack. Mm-hmm. I can tell you with full honesty that not even the Metal Gear Solid games that have come after have recaptured the feel of Metal Gear Solid 1. I keep wanting Hideo Kojima, and now I'm gonna be forever left wanting to go back to what made Metal Gear Solid so special, and it's that, again, as you said, that simplicity. It gives you all the rules, you understand the rules, and if you play by the rules, you can get through the game. Mm-hmm. And there's just, not even Kojima has been able to achieve another Metal Gear Solid. It's a game that was a result of a lot of things coming together, a lot of factors coming together, and making for something really superlative. I really want to give Half-Life more of a shot. I think that we gave it a very good shot, and that I got this far. And we've already baked in all the points that you made, Paul, into its advancement and its progress. But I do think that if I was a video game reviewer and there was ever a 10 I would give out, I would give it to Metal Gear Solid. I just think about me having that demo and playing that demo over 24 times over and over again because I didn't have the game. And it was just fine with me because the idea of, you know, trying to outfox, no pun intended, the genome soldiers and getting around them and being able to smoke. And then you're told, smoking is bad for you. It's just all those little details. You can't really get them anywhere else. I really do think that it's a game that will probably never be replicated. We're going to have things that are different and they're fantastic in their own right, but I don't think we're ever going to replicate this game.
Cool. All right, Anthony, what about you?
Yeah, this was so good, man. It's like, the thing is with both these games, they both pushed their genres, right? They both pushed everything forward. But I completely agree with what Ozzy said, that Metal Gear Solid is the one Metal Gear game that kept me. Like all the other ones I would play and it just wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say though with Metal Gear Solid is that it made me want to play every other game like this. It made me want to play every game stealthy, like even first person shooters. You know, like I wanted to play my games like this. It had that sense of like that realism of just sneaking around and everything. But I think that with Metal Gear, there was so many just wow moments for me. So many moments in that game that are just going to stick with me for the rest of my life and put a smile on my face. And to me, they haven't made a Metal Gear Solid game that I want to play after this one. But I think they've made plenty of Half-Life games that you could want to play after the original. So to me, I'm going to go with Metal Gear Solid.
All right. Good enough. Arnie.
These are two excellent games. Like, I think in a tournament full of great games, these are two great fucking games. And so the fact that we're standing here now doing this should really be a surprise. I think ultimately what it comes down to for me is just, you know, what game do I think has had not only achieved greatness for its time, but moving forward? You know, what can you go back to and still play and still enjoy? What sort of created these reverberations, these waves that we still talk about today? And as much as I hate to do this, I have to give it to Metal Gear Solid on this one. It's a game that, even though I haven't really experienced it as much as I should, I can't deny the just gigantic impact it's had on, this entire hobby that we enjoy.
Yeah, good enough.
Yep.
And I'll just do mine here. It's Metal Gear. For me, it has to be for all that I was saying about Legacy and how Half-Life left quite an imprint.
Yeah.
And, kind of the diminishment of Metal Gear Solid's genre and so on. Let's not forget Metal Gear Solid had those production values and everything was compared to it after that. If your presentation, if your plot, if your voice acting wasn't up to par with Metal Gear Solid, then it suffered. Just that's kind of the bottom line. So Jeff, I think I have an idea of where you're leaning, but why don't you put the nail in the coffin there?
Metal Gear Solid. Bam. Fud. Dig up the gravel. In it goes. Very, very Half-Life.
Yeah. I think this one wasn't a surprise. I'm a little bit surprised with the Ocarina one. I didn't expect it to go so well, but this one I fully expected kind of like a 5-0, maybe a 4-1, because Arnie is just unpredictable, honestly.
A wild card.
I had to give him one.
Hey, we did it, guys. We should be more excited. We have.
I know.
It's relief, isn't it?
We've disappointed a whole host of listeners.
I think this is a great decision, though. Metal Gear Solid deserves this, man.
Oh yeah,
Definitely deserves
I
it.
don't think there's any real room for debate on it.
Undoubtedly.
The points have been made, and it is what it is.
Yep.
Do we have an award to send to Hideo Kojima then? Do we have something to send to him to congratulate him on our pick? Or
yes, but he'll have to come on the podcast before I give it to him.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Oh yeah, we
yes.
can't just we can't give
I
stuff.
have
away.
a leftover toilet that I can send him since he's so fond of poop jokes. Maybe he'll like that.
And we lost
Man, the
him.
shipping costs on
And we
that.
lost him.
Jeez.
That's it.
All right.
No, I mean, just to recap, so Metal Gear Solid, first one. Half-Life second,
Yep.
Ocarina third, and Gran Turismo fourth. I think that's
think
your
that's-
podium right there.
I think that's a solid top four right there.
yeah.
I think if you would have looked at this tournament from the beginning and you said those are your top four, I think we'd be all right with that.
Yeah. I certainly would've
Ocarina. There's a lot of room for debate with respect to that one, but I feel comfortable
It's
with that.
there though.
Give 'em their bronze
As much
medal,
as we tried
for
to get
God's
it out of
sake.
there, it's there.
Just let him be happy.
Yeah, let it live, baby.
Well, I had a shit ton of fun with this whole thing. God, it's been, I can't remember who brought it up earlier in the episode, but the comparison, it might have been Jeff, to like talking in the schoolyard about which game is better and so on and so forth. I've got to do that now, like, I don't know,
For a
8
year.
times or something like that. Yeah, for a year.
Yeah, for a whole year.
On episodes though, like it's just been fun, man. It's fun to talk about. That's the podcast. It's fun to talk about video games. That's kind of the bottom line. It's kind of why we're here. So why should I be surprised? So with that said, I mean, if we do this again, we've talked about doing 2001.
Yeah.
I don't know, guys. Like, Arnie, is there any year that you'd like to do in this kind of format again?
I mean, 2001 is the year, right? But if we're picking another year for me, I don't know. I think I'm kind of pissed because me being so young, I feel like I can't go backwards like further than 91 without being like, I was not even a fetus at this time. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, like we talked about it earlier, 85 is probably a big year. I think somebody had mentioned 2017. I think Ozzy did. Is that right?
Yeah.
2017 is a banner year. Like,
Yeah.
that would be an interesting one, especially coming at it from a more modern perspective. Because I think with 98, even though it's an amazing year, there's a lot of put yourself back in those shoes. There's a lot of like mental sort of tricks you have to do to be like, how can I justify how I felt about this? Whereas with 2017, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that. Like that was like 2
it was
years ago.
yesterday.
And just to argue against myself, Arnie, the thing with 2017 is that we still haven't felt the full effect of it yet.
Yeah, that's
so
fair.
we don't know how many games Breath of the Wild is going to influence. We don't know how many games Nier Automata is going to influence on whether it will age well in 10 years. So, yes, it's a very interesting year, but we may need to let it marinate a little bit. We may need to let it kind of sit and become more of a vintage before we actually tackle it. The reason why I raised it was it just feels like such a perfect circle, because that's how we started the podcast, just looking back on 2017.
Yeah.
And, I remember picking Super Mario Odyssey as my favorite game of that year, and you guys picked Breath of the Wild. Arnie, you picked Persona 5.
Yep. So
that's the big reason why. But, I mean, I would like to explore some of the older years, like 94. 94 for sure is a game, it's a year that I want to explore with Super Metroid and Final Fantasy VI. Just to be able to look back on games that I did not experience, firsthand, but that I can go back to it and see it on a more objective basis.
Yeah. If I'm being 100% honest, like the year that I do truly want to do, the year that I've wanted to do since we started this was kind of 1997, because I was like, oh, we can't talk about Symphony of the Night. Oh, we can't talk about Final Fantasy VII. Like, why are all these great games, like, just out of my reach for this thing that I'm doing right now?
That's a really good point. Yeah, because of 98, we got to see so many that were done in 97 because we just weren't.
I just got to be disappointed multiple times.
Interesting.
No, I would have happily spoken about Symphony of the Night 4 times, because obviously it would have won. Obviously. No, I was having a think in terms of the modern years. I mean, I think as well, 2013 is one of those years. We still see Grand Theft Auto 5 being released time and time again. Like, we know the impact that's going to have. But the 3DS was huge that year as well. There were some top games. Maybe from a modern perspective, that could be a year, because that was 7 years ago, obviously. That might be approaching something of a modern take that we could look at. But for me, I'm torn between 96 and 97, mostly for the personal attachment. 96 mostly because I spent 2 weeks of a summer in France, and there was a Metal Slug machine in the campsite, and I was just addicted to it. I was terrible at it, but I was besotted by it. So that's a big year. And I remember a mate getting Duke Nukem 3D. Some really influential stuff. So 96 and 97 are like utterly brilliant years. But yeah, if we're going to go back to the 90s, I'm really with Ozzy, stepping back a little bit further, because I was playing the SNES avidly back in 94. I didn't have all the big hits that we know of today. But I think of all the 90s years, that could be getting away from that world of 3D gaming, going back a generation would be good. So that would be my pick, either 94, why not, or 2013.
Interesting. Anthony, what about you?
Yeah, I was going to say 96. 96 was you forget, like, that's when the initial launch window of, like, the PlayStation ended. So the next year you had games like Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider, Resident Evil, right? Resident Evil was 96, I believe.
Yeah.
And not to mention the Nintendo 64, Mario 64.
And that's it.
Right? That's it. I mean, it's just like, man, off the top of my head, just like some of these games that came out that year were pretty big, pretty influential games that year.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
But I like this whole, it's funny. I think so when we start thinking about these lists, automatically I go back to the 90s, but I'm like, oh yeah, something current. Yeah, that'd be nice too.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't mind doing something maybe a little more current. So for me, I think 2007 was actually a pretty good one on paper and in real life as well. Like on paper, you've got Portal, you've got Halo 3,
Mass Effect.
Those like Halo 3, Halo Mass
3
Effect,
BioShock.
Yeah, Assassin's
Call of Duty
Creed,
4, Modern Warfare.
Uncharted.
Oh my god, how much Modern Warfare did I play? Like, which
Super Mario
is
Galaxy.
not my kind of game, but yeah. Rock Band came out in 2007, and Rock Band was an absolute phenomenon.
Yeah.
That's got to be an episode we do one day, because what an interesting subject Rock Band is. Like, what a supernova. Jeez, man.
Just peripheral-based games will be a good episode.
Yeah, peripheral-based games even would be a good one.
I've got my Densha to go train controller conversation ready to go, Ozzy. Ready to go.
It starts with Samba de Amigo, people. It starts with Samba de Amigo.
But yeah, even for me personally, like 2007 was, I had like a few kind of, I was in a relationship where playing video games was frowned upon, and I did it clandestinely, like in the shadows, and so I missed out on a lot for a couple of years there, 2005, 2006, and then 2007 I finally had freedom, and I played as much as I possibly could, and yeah, so for me that's quite a year as well.
Yeah.
I tell you what though, there's nothing like stopping gaming for a year and a half to 2 years to make you appreciate how much you love it. It really
Oh
isn't.
man,
Yeah.
it really isn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when it's not a choice and you're kind of like handcuffed. Because I've had breaks from gaming that were like kind of my own choice, and then you come back to it eventually, and you're like, yeah, but boy, when it's just like taken away, then you're really chomping at the bit to get back at it. All right, guys. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Boy, oh boy. Thanks, guys, for
What a journey.
for all the help
Man,
and,
this has
and all
been
the
a journey,
work in
yeah.
doing this. Yeah.
So many twists,
Very
so many
commemorative
turns.
on so many levels.
Yeah. Cool. And again, thanks to all our listeners for joining with us and sticking with us through this whole series. It's been so much fun. And yeah, again, a reminder, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can go to regionfreegamers.com, or you can talk to us on Instagram. We are at Region Free Gamers Podcast. On Twitter, because of the character limit, we are at Region Free Gamer. And I think that pretty much covers it. Thanks, guys.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Arnie, answer me, Arnie. Arnie! How can he be so bad at this game?